Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? How are you guys doing this week? Thank you for listening. I am Chris of the Chris and Christine Show, and this is Podtastic Audio. You can find me on the other show at www.chrisandchristineshow.com. Hey, how's that podcast coming along? How are you guys doing it? Have you started yet? Well, if you have, I know probably the hardest thing to do really is hit the record button because you guys get all nervous in your head on what you're going to talk about. Now, this week on this episode, like I teased in the previous episode, I talked about editing and editing stuff you can use and tools that I have used for our podcast and of how we use the magical Levelator to take care of all the audio type stuff. Now, on this week's episode of this podcast, I am going to tell you how to do a remote interview or a remote broadcast. Say you have a guest that's not in your same location and you want to have him on the show or a co-host. So I'm going to show you the way that we use to make all of our interviews for the Chris and Christine Show. Now, I know there's plenty of ways to do a remote recording, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of what people have used in the past to do those remote recordings. Now, in the past, like long time ago, the way you would do a recording, say on a cassette tape or for the radio show, if they wanted to record an interview, the way they would do it would be two guys would do it over the phone. Now, the phones wouldn't connect to each other. What they would do is take the phone and they would do what's called a double ender. I know you probably have heard what's a double ender. Now, a double ender is basically kind of what it sounds like. You record at both ends of the phone call. So what they would do in the past is you would call your buddy that you do your interview with. He would record, he'd have his phone, and next to his phone, he'd have a microphone attached to like a tape deck recorder. So he would be recording his own voice on his tape deck. You would be doing the same thing on your side of the phone call. So you have the phone, and you'd be recording your voice into a tape deck on your side with a separate microphone. So you have basically, at the end of the deal, you would have a tape deck recording of your side of the conversation, and your friend would have a tape deck recording of their side of the conversation. And so what somebody have to do is physically mail the tape in the mail. Yeah, I know, the mail. Send it over to the other guy's place, and that other guy, he would have both sides of the conversation. He would have to physically line up the conversation with both tapes and make it as in one uniform conversation. That is called a double ender. So on both ends of the call, they're being recorded separately, and then somebody has to, pity his soul on that guy, has to put the tapes together and make it sound like it's one uniform conversation in one place. Now, I know there are lots of ways to do remote interviews, and double ender is kind of the way people do it. But instead of with a phone call and actual cassette tapes, in today's world, they actually do it over the computer. Now, you could do virtually the same thing over the computer. So you would record in your favorite recording platform, like I said, Audacity, because it's free. You would record your side of the conversation. You would have to connect with the other person. Hell, it could be by the phone if you want it to be. On the phone, talking to them, and then you're physically talking into your microphone at the same time. So you're recording your end, but physically you're kind of connected through like the phone line. So you're talking them over the phone, but you're recording it on your computer. Now, both sides of the conversation have to do it the same way in order for this to work out. So what you do is you do it that way, and then you digitally would send over your side of the conversation to the other guy, or he would send it to you. And one of you guys would have to actually stitch the thing together and splice it together. Now, the problem with a double ender, what I've been told, is something called the drift. Now, the drift is basically, it probably happens more, I would consider, with the old-fashioned, with the cassette tapes. because some cassette tapes, they slip and they have a little slippage and their timing is just off. Same thing with the computer. So when you do a double ender, your friend's computer's clock could be running at quite a different beat than yours. It might be so small, like micro small, but over a long period of an interview, that slippage could make your tracks be off a beat. So by the time you get to the end, you guys are like talking over each other because the tracks aren't lining up precisely. It's called the drift effect. It happens when two tracks are drifting apart from each other because you're on different clocks. It's so small, but in the age of computers now, they're pretty quick and they're awfully pretty close. So they're pretty hard to get off like that. I've heard it happens on really long interviews because the longer you go, because you think about this, if your computers are off by like a fraction of a millibeat or millisecond or whatever it is, it might not sound like a lot, but over a long interview, like over an hour, it could possibly be off. And then somebody, it's not that hard to do. A little bit of editing, you can figure it out, but you have to figure out and make sure that they line up correctly. And like I said, there are lots of ways to do this. There's Skype, there is Zoom, there is Zencastr, there is Squadcast, and there's one that we have chosen to use for our interviews. And not only am I going to show you what this platform can do, is I'm going to show you samples of our other show, the Chris and Christine Show, samples of interviews that we used on this platform. Now, before I get started on what we actually do use, I'm going to say the way a lot of these other platforms work is they do a virtual double ender. Like I just said, it records both sides and then it splices them together in the cloud. And then usually you have to wait for them to download back to your computer. So I believe in like Zencastr's case, you would record your end. Zencastr kind of connects the two of you guys through the internet, but in the cloud, it kind of saves your half and then it saves the other person's half. And then what it does is you have to download or probably wait to sync up until both the files have been synced up correctly, and then download that whole file back to your computer. And I never used Zencastr, but that's my understanding of the way it works. Same with Squadcast, although Squadcast lets you do video, and now they just released a video that you can save to your computer. That's going to take up a lot of data. I'm sure it's going to be a big file. And if you cut out the conversation early, you may actually lose that data. You may actually lose half the conversation if you cut out early. The program that we use, it does not do a double ender, and it does not do video, but you can do video with it. It's kind of complicated, but I'm going to talk about what I'm talking about today is we use the great old cleanfeed.net. Now you're thinking, what is CleanFeed? Well, that's a good question because CleanFeed, it's an online recording platform. Everything is done online in the browser of your computer. It requires Google Chrome to run on. You can work with Mac. I've seen it work with Macintosh computers. It can work on iPhone. It can work on Android phones. Although on the Mac phones, like the iPhone, it only works as a guest, not as a host. I know, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. It gets very confusing, but cleanfeed.net, in my opinion, gives you the cleanest, clearest sound from computer to computer without a double ender, meaning it's not recording both sides and then stitching them together. Everything comes through the line live, and it gets recorded live. It's designed, the guys that created this stuff worked in live radio. So their whole mission when they designed CleanFeed, they had this whole like live recording things as they come through live mentality. None of this double ender stuff. They wanted to make sure everything came through as clean, as clear as possible. So they don't do any compression on the sound like a Zoom call does. The way a Zoom call does is Zoom actually, the audio comes through, but they actually put a lot of compression on the sound. So it has that weird Zoom sound. CleanFeed is so crisp and clear that when it comes through, you basically hear everything. So it's always advised that your guest has headphones on so there's no echo. But CleanFeed does have a few features in the Pro plan that let you take care of that stuff. So CleanFeed basically has two versions you can pay for. The free version, which lets you connect as many guests as you want for as long as you want. and crystal clear audio, although there are no extra features. The extra features, in my opinion, are well worth the money. I pay an extra $22 a month for the Pro plan. And with the Pro plan, you got a lot of cool toys you get to play with it, like Echo Cancel. If your guest refuses to do headphones, you can take out the echo. You can fix some of the audio stuff. You can record in super high quality audio. We're talking like higher than CD quality audio. You can send across the internet that way. You can add clips and sound effects, as many as you want, as loud as you want. You can do multi-track recording. So everybody has their own individual track, and it saves it right down to your computer. Simple, easy, very fast. I love it. Cleanfeed.net. Now, like I said, you can get the free version, get started. It doesn't cost you anything. But beware, when you do use CleanFeed, it does require a fairly stable internet connection. It doesn't have to be like 100 gigabyte speed or anything like that. It just has to be decent enough to hold the connection. If you have bad internet, it may get kind of that garbly kind of digital sound, that glitchy sound might pop out. It does happen from time to time because the internet, we all know, it's kind of glitchy. It depends on what kind of internet your guest has and what kind of internet you have. If you both have really good internet and decent gear, it will sound as if you guys are in the same room. I mean, you wouldn't even know the difference. So that's what I'm talking about. It's very, very good, and it's very, very easy to use because once you got it recording, all you have to do is there's a little drop-down arrow button to the right. It's easier to show you than tell you about it, but you hit the little save button, and what it does is it will save whatever you said so far in the conversation up to that point without interrupting the conversation. So during the course of, say, a 20-minute interview, if you hit the save button every 5 minutes, it's going to take a snapshot and save everything that you did up to that point, the 5-minute mark, the 10-minute mark, the 15-minute mark, as in individual files. Like you're going to have a file of everything up to the 5-minute, 10-minute, and 15-minute increments as their own separate files. Plus, you'll save one at the end. Do that as like a backup. I do that during interviews. About every 10 minutes, I will hit this download button and save everything we've done so far. So it's actually being saved in case we lose the connection, or if the Chrome, for whatever reason, it hasn't happened yet, knock on wood, but say Chrome, for whatever reason, just disappeared and it crashed on us, right? If we did not hit the download button, we wouldn't have it. So we would actually have a copy of that. And another thing too, when we are done with the interview, you just hit stop button and you hit the download button. And while it's downloading to your PC from the browser, the guest at that point can leave and it wouldn't make a difference. They can go. There's no rendering on their side. There's nothing on their end. The guest has to do nothing. All they got to do is show up with a decent microphone and hopefully headphones. But, I mean, you can work around the headphones with the Pro plan. That's basically it. Now, I have some samples of audio clips from our show I'd like to show you guys to tell you what I'm actually talking about here. Now, in this first clip, our guest was, we're in San Diego, and our guest was on the East Coast in Atlanta, Georgia. So here is clip number 1 of us using CleanFeed.
Yeah, speaking of that being a very different world now, so you talked to us a bit about your journey and what led you into podcasting, but what is life like now for Jonathan Strickland with iHeartMedia?
Well, there's a lot less walking. So my office is 3 miles away from my home, and I would walk to work. So it's an hour each way. It's actually how I listen to most podcasts.
Wow, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a way for me to, exercise, also to kind of clear my mind, to prepare myself, and also clear my mind at the end of the day. The stuff we do, it tends to be a lot of information overload, and that can be just as exhausting as physical labor can be. And so, it's nice to have that hour-long walk back. It sounds like it's a lot, but it was actually really kind of centering and calming for me. Well, that's all gone now. Now I come downstairs and I work out of my home office.
Well, thank you, Jonathan Strickland. He was in Atlanta, Georgia. He is from the How Stuff Works podcast under the Tech Stuff, and he came on our show. But that was recorded, all done in CleanFeed. And as you can tell, it sounds almost as if he's in the same room. If I didn't tell you that he was afar, it almost sounds like we're all together in the same room. And that's basically what I'm trying to tell you what Clean Feed sounds like. Here is our next guest. He is also on the East Coast. So we're talking 2,000 miles away. This is what it sounds like with Clean Feed.
Reality show, and I'm going to try to keep this as unbiased as possible because I'm slightly jaded from this experience.
You could be jaded. This is your place to
Listen,
be jaded.
I haven't never seen the show, so I can't have no opinion one way or the other. You know what I'm saying?
So it's a show where you tell 3 experts kind of what you're looking for in a potential partner, and then you go to they say, oh, we found someone for you. You go to the altar blind, and then you meet your partner at the altar, and then they film you for 2 months of being married. You get married.
So you actually marry them.
Oh, you actually marry them. So I am divorced.
Do you take the blind?
Well, I'm divorced and Christine's divorced. Hey, we're all divorced here. It's all good.
And we had no blindfold on, so
That was Lou Kukurulu, can't say his name, from the show, I forget what show he was on. I can't remember what show he was on, but he was on a dating show, and he was in the East Coast, and he had I think he said he had a Blue Yeti microphone, but he was back in Pennsylvania, I think he said he was in, and so we're here in San Diego, 2,000 miles away. Now, as far as using video, because I know Squadcast, their upsell feature that they would say was that we got video with our audio. Now, listen, I know Clean Feed is just an audio-based platform, but don't you worry. Don't you worry at all. You can use video with Clean Feed. And you're thinking, how can you use video with Clean Feed? Is that you set up your Clean Feed account, you log everybody in with Clean Feed, everybody's up and running in Clean Feed. You open your Zoom or Skype or Google Meet or whatever you do to do video. Okay, FaceTime, doesn't matter. But you link them in through that service, and then you hit mute on all the microphones and sound choices for the Zoom or for the face-to-face video stuff. You mute that stuff, so only the audio from the Clean Feed is being heard by both parties. So it's recorded the Clean Feed audio, but if you need to see each other, you can do it that way with the like I said, Zoom or whatever. Just make sure the microphones are on mute. I have used it a few times, and it's worked out great. Now, our next clip here is a guest. She's in the LA area, which is not that far from here, but just the level of clarity and the level of the way everything sounds. And we did not have any cameras going on. This was all done through our ears with Clean Feed, just audio only. Here's that clip.
We're saturated career to move to LA for.
Really?
I know, right? That's a newsflash for everybody.
No way. I had no idea. I thought you just walk into LA and the first thing it'd say is, what movie do you want to be in?
Well, they just hand you an agent when you walk, like when you get on the 405. Yeah, you just get an agent. They're like, hello.
That's what the toll roads pay for.
They do. It's just agent commissions. It's just 10%. There you
exactly.
go. Right
it's the findings fee for you.
And that was from LA. That was Tara Jean O'Brien. I'm sorry, Tara. She's going to kill me. It was Tara Jean O'Brien. Gosh, because she uses tartar sauce 1. That's how I remember her name was Tara. That's right. Anyways, she was a comedian from LA, joined us. Very nice. A very, very nice interview. It was fantastic. We all had a great time. And that's the thing with Clean Feed is we all can have a great time, sound like we're all in the same room. It all can be great. I know some people like the video. And like I said, you can still use video if you actually have to have a video thing. But if you do the video with the Clean Feed, it may be a lot of stress on your internet if you have a weak internet or internet it's being shared by lots of different people. So the next 2 clips I have are very, very important because in these next 2 clips, the 3 of us in this conversation were on different sides of the world. Well, kind of. The world, planet. Yeah. So I was down here in San Diego. Christine was up in her parents' house, which is 350 miles north of here. So 350 miles away. And then our next guest was in, I think she said, Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, I think it was, because we were talking about the Philadelphia cheesesteaks and things like that. So in this next clip, the 3 of us are in 3 different locations. And here's Clean Feed 3 different locations, and Christine and I were communicating through Zoom so we could see each other and make little hand gestures to each other to give each other like kind of clues on what we're going to say, or I'm going to say the next question, or you're going to say the next question. We kind of point back and forth. So here's that sample of that interview here.
By Michael King.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was magnificent.
That's fantastic. It's just to say that you want to be a teacher. Now, Christine over here, her entire life has been in education.
Oh, how about that? Yeah, I was just listening to one of your episodes and you were talking about an ed tech company that you started in this virtual nightmare that's happening for students. That's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. I work in education full time, but I get that. Like, I think it is a different breed of person when you grow up. And
so that was 3 of us were in different locations across the country, 350 miles, 2,000 miles away. And like I said, you can have as many people you want on the line at the same time. And you can actually control individual microphones by muting each person. If one person's talking, one person's loud. I mean, I think you can go as many as you want as long as your internet can handle that. You have to have pretty good internet, especially if you're doing multi-track recording on the Pro plan. The Pro plan is $22 a month for the discounted price if you're using it as an individual, as a hobby. If you're a company or a business, I think they charge you like $35 or $36. But don't tell them that. Just tell them you're an individual and you'll get it for $22. And I believe that the just having the samples alone, like I just did, is well worth the price to pay. Now, this last clip is one of my favorite clips because it shows how we have somebody that is across the ocean talking to us. There's 3 of us in this conversation. Christine is 350 miles away to the north. I'm down here in San Diego. Our guest is in Hawaii, across the ocean in Hawaii. This is what it sounds like when you have 3 people using CleanFeed, and that's how far apart it is. You ever watch Jerry Springer, how he had like that moment at the very end where you like sit down and tell you his peaceful thoughts, like his thought of the day.
We're not calling you Jerry Springer. Sorry,
no,
Catherine.
not at all. I'm just someone. I just wonder if you have that whole like speech he does at the very end of your podcast, like a bring it together, close kind of thing.
Oh, I'm going to have to implement one of those. That sounds pretty interesting.
Well, you ever seen the show? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Like a food for thought moment.
Right.
So I do have a question. It might be a little bit deeper for you, Catherine, but you mentioned that your spouse is currently still in the Army?
So that is what it sounds like with CleanFeed. 3 people, 3 locations, and one of them is across the ocean. And how smooth and how it all sounds like we're all in the same room. As I listen to this, I'm thinking, were we all together when we recorded that? Because it sounded like we were, but it wasn't. That's the illusion of CleanFeed. The audio is that good. I'm telling you, it is that good. If everybody's got the right equipment, and you could even take phone calls with CleanFeed. If somebody has an iPhone or an Android phone, you send them the link. They pull up their phone, their email, they log into it, it goes into their browser on their phone, and they just talk into it like a phone, like they can use earbuds if they want, or they can hold the phone next to their ear and do the same exact thing. The audio is a little less because you're obviously coming through a phone versus a microphone, but it doesn't sound that bad. So I recommend CleanFeed. Now, I know CleanFeed has really became very, very popular in the last year or so, probably because of its free service and how good the audio quality is. I mean, it is so good, it picks up everything on the other end. When you have the first connection, when you first connect to somebody, you will notice like they'll have a fan on, they'll have cars in the background running by the street. You'll hear that. You'll tell them, hey, can you close your window? You can hear that? Yeah, I can hear that. CleanFeed is that good. It is CleanFeed. It's in the name. So I recommend CleanFeed. And if you guys should definitely be using CleanFeed for your remote interviews. And if you don't even have to do that. If you have a co-host that's, say, in another part of the country, you guys both connect via CleanFeed, and then you guys do a Zoom call to each other so you can see each other if that's what you need. And then you guys have your regular conversation. And to let you guys know something, right now, this podcast episode is being 100% recorded in CleanFeed. Yes, I am using CleanFeed right now on this podcast. This whole thing today has been recorded 100% in clean feed. You're welcome. You're all welcome. And next episode, I have a very, very special treat. Next week's episode, I have a guest who not only is any guest, this guy is a superhero when it comes to podcasting. He's been teaching podcasting for a very long time. He is an expert. He's written 2 books. He's got he's been on a dozen different podcasts. He's been podcasting for like 16 years. And he's been there from the very, very beginning. And I had a chance to talk with him. So next week, I am going to play back that interview with that very special VIP guest. And thank you so much for listening. I'll be back with that next week.